Everglades National Park is a U.S. national park in Florida that protects the southern 20% of the original Everglades. In the United States, it is the largest tropical wilderness, the largest wilderness of any kind east of the Mississippi River, and is visited on average by 1 million people each year. It is the third largest national park in the lower 48 states after Death Valley and Yellowstone. It has been declared an International Biosphere Reserve, a World Heritage Site, and a wetland of international importance, one of only 3 locations in the world to appear on all 3 lists. Although most U.S. national parks preserve unique geographic features, Everglades National Park was the first created to protect a fragile ecosystem. The Everglades are a network of wetlands and forests fed by a river flowing 25 miles per day out of Lake Okeechobee, southwest into Florida Bay. The park is the most significant breeding ground for tropical wading birds in North America, contains the largest mangrove ecosystem in the Western Hemisphere, is home to 36 threatened or protected species including the Florida panther, the American crocodile, and the West Indian manatee, and supports 350 species of birds, 300 species of fresh and saltwater fish, 40 species of mammals, and 50 species of reptiles. The majority of South Florida's fresh water, which is stored in the Biscayne Aquifer, is recharged in the park. Humans have lived for thousands of years in or around the Everglades until plans arose in 1882 to drain the wetlands and develop the recovered land for agricultural and residential use. As the 20th century progressed, water flow from Lake Okeechobee was increasingly controlled and diverted to enable explosive growth of the South Florida metropolitan area. The park was established in 1934 to protect the quickly vanishing Everglades, and dedicated in 1947. As massive canal building projects were initiated across South Florida, the ecosystems in Everglades National Park have suffered significantly from human activity, and restoration of the Everglades is a politically charged issue in South Florida. Geography. Everglades National Park covers 1,509,000 acres throughout Dade, Monroe, and Collier counties in Florida. The elevation typically ranges from 0 to 8 feet above sea level, but a Calusa-built shell mound on the Gulf Coast rises 20 feet above sea level. Geology. The terrain of South Florida is relatively and consistently flat, although rock formations are not of central draw to Everglades National Park. The limestone that underlies the Everglades is integral to the formation of the diverse ecosystems within the park. Florida was once part of the African portion of the supercontinent Gondwana. After it separated, conditions allowed a shallow marine environment to deposit calcium carbonate in sand, shells, and coral to be converted into limestone. Tiny bits of shell, sand, and bryozoans compressed over multiple layers, forming unique structures in the limestone called ooids, which created porous and permeable conditions to hold water. The Florida Peninsula appeared above sea level between 100,000 and 150,000 years ago. As sea levels at the end of the Wisconsin Ice Age rose, the water table appeared closer to land. Lake Okeechobee began to flood and convection thunderstorms were created. Vast peat deposits south of Lake Okeechobee indicate that regular flooding had occurred about 5,000 years ago. Plants began to migrate, subtropical ones from the northern part of Florida, and tropicals carried as seeds by birds from islands in the Caribbean. Although the limestone shelf appears to be flat, There are slight rises, called pinnacles, and depressions caused by the erosion of limestone by the acidic properties of the water. The amount of time throughout the year that water is present in a location in the Everglades determines the type of soil, of which there are only two in the Everglades: peat, created by many years of decomposing plant matter, and marl, the result of dried porphyrin, or chunks of algae and microorganisms that create a grayish mud. Portions of the Everglades that remain flooded for more than 9 months out of the year are usually covered by peat. Areas that are flooded 6 months or less are covered by marl. Plant communities are determined by the type of soil and amount of water present. Climate. While they are common in the northern portion of Florida, no underground springs feed water into the Everglades system. An underground reservoir called the Floridan Aquifer lies about 1,000 feet below the surface of South Florida. However, the Everglades has an immense capacity for water storage, owing to the sponge-like permeable limestone beneath the exposed land. Most of the water arrives in the form of rainfall, and a significant amount is stored in the limestone. Water evaporating from the Everglades becomes rain over metropolitan areas, providing the fresh water supply for the region. Water also flows into the park after falling as rain to the north onto the watersheds of the Kissimmee River and other sources of Lake Okeechobee, to appear in the Everglades days later. Water overflows Lake Okeechobee into a river 40 to 70 miles wide, which moves almost imperceptibly. Everglades National Park has a tropical savanna climate and tropical monsoon climate, depending on location. Most of the central region has a savanna climate, while regions closer to shore, especially the eastern quarter of the park, has a monsoonal climate. Both climates are characterized by 2 seasons, wet and dry. The park's dry season lasts from December to April, when temperatures vary from 53 degrees Fahrenheit to 77 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity is low. Since water levels are low at that time, animals congregate at central water locations, providing popular opportunities for viewing the wildlife. During the wet season, from May to November, temperatures are consistently above 90 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity over 90%. Storms can drop 10 to 12 inches of rain at a time, providing half the year's average of 60 inches of rainfall in just 2 months. Ecosystems. At the turn of the 20th century, common concepts of what should be protected in national parks invariably included formidable geologic features like mountains, geysers, or canyons. As Florida's population began to grow significantly and urban areas near the Everglades were developed, proponents of the park's establishment faced difficulty in persuading the federal government and the people of Florida that the subtle and constantly shifting ecosystems in the Everglades were just as worthy of protection. When the park was established in 1947, it became the first area within the U.S. to protect flora and fauna native to a region as opposed to geologic scenery. The National Park Service recognizes 9 distinct interdependent ecosystems within the park that constantly shift in size owing to the amount of water present and other environmental factors. Freshwater sloughs and marl prairies. Freshwater sloughs are perhaps the most common ecosystem associated with Everglades National Park. These drainage channels are characterized by low-lying areas covered in fresh water, flowing at an almost imperceptible 100 feet per day. Shark River slough and Taylor slough are significant features of the park. Sawgrass growing to a length of 6 feet or more, and broad-leafed marsh plants are so prominent in this region that they gave the Everglades its nickname, River of Grass, cemented in the public imagination in the title title for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas's book, which culminated years of her advocacy for considering the Everglades ecosystem as more than a swamp. Excellent feeding locations for birds. Sloughs in the Everglades attract a great variety of waders such as herons, egrets, roseate spoonbills, ibises and brown pelicans, as well as limpkins and snailkites that eat apple snails, which in turn feed on the sawgrass. The slough's availability of fish, amphibians, and young birds attract a variety of freshwater turtles, alligators, water moccasins, and eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. Freshwater marl prairies are similar to sloughs, but lack the slow movement of surface water. Instead, water seeps through a calcitic mud called marl. Algae and other microscopic organisms form porphyrin, which attaches to limestone. When it dries, it turns into a gray mud. Sawgrass and other water plants grow shorter in freshwater marl than they do in peat, the other type of soil in the Everglades, which is found where water remains present longer throughout the year. Marl prairies are usually underwater from 3 to 7 months of the year, whereas sloughs may remain submerged for longer than 9 months and sometimes remain underwater from 1 year to the next. Sawgrass may dominate sloughs, creating a monoculture. Other grasses, such as smoolie grass and broadleafed water plants, can be found in marl prairies. Animals living in the freshwater sloughs also inhabit in marl prairies. Marl prairies may go dry in some parts of the year. Alligators play a vital role in maintaining life in remote parts of the Everglades by burrowing in the mud during the dry season, creating pools of water where fish and amphibians survive from 1 year to the next. Alligator holes also attract other animals who congregate to feed on smaller prey. When the region floods again during the wet season, the fish and amphibians who were sustained in the alligator holes then repopulate freshwater marl prairies. Tropical hardwood hammocks. Hammocks are often the only dry land within the park. They rise several inches above the grass-covered river and are dominated by diverse plant life consisting of subtropical and tropical trees, such as large southern live oaks. Trees often form canopies under which animals thrive amongst scrub bushes of wild coffee, white indigoberry, poisonwood and saw palmetto. The park features thousands of these tree islands amid sloughs, which often form the shape of a teardrop when seen from above because of the slowly moving water around them, but they can also be found in pineland and mangroves. Trees in the Everglades, including wild tamarind and gumbo limbo, rarely grow higher than 50 feet due to wind, cold weather, and lightning strikes. The plant growth around the hammock base is nearly impenetrable. However, beneath the canopy, hammocks are an ideal habitat for animals. Reptiles and amphibians find their homes in the hardwood hammocks. Birds such as barred owls, woodpeckers, northern cardinals, and southern bald eagles nest in hammock trees. Mammal species living in hardwood hammocks include opossums, raccoons, bobcats, Everglades mink, marsh rabbits, white-tailed deer, and the rare, critically endangered Florida panther. Pine-Dade County was once covered in 186,000 acres of pine rockland forests, but most of it was harvested by the lumber industry. Pineland ecosystems are characterized by shallow, dry sandy loam over a limestone substrate covered almost exclusively by slash pines. Trees in this ecosystem grow in solution holes, where the soft limestone has worn away and filled with soil, allowing plants to take hold. Pinelands require regular maintenance by fire to ensure their existence. South Florida slash pines are uniquely adapted to promote fire by dropping a large amount of dried pine needles and shedding dry bark. Pine cones require heat from fires to open, allowing seeds to disperse and take hold. The trunks and roots of slash pines, however, are resistant to fire. Prescribed burns in these areas take place every 3 to 7 years, without regular fires. Hardwood trees begin to grow in this region and pinelands become recategorized as mixed swamp forests. Most plants in the area bloom about 16 weeks after a fire. Nearly all pinelands have an understory of palm shrubs, and a diverse ground covering of wild herbs. Pine rocklands are considered one of the most threatened habitats in Florida. Less than 4,000 acres of pineland exist outside the park. Within the park, 20,000 acres of pineland are protected. A variety of animal species meet the needs for food, shelter, nesting, and rooking in pine rocklands. Woodpeckers, eastern meadowlarks, loggerhead shrikes, grackles, and northern mockingbirds are commonly found in pinelands. Black bears and Florida panthers also live in this habitat. Cypress and mangrove. Cypress trees are conifers that are adapted to live in standing fresh water. They grow in compact structures called cypress domes and in long strands over limestone. Water levels may fluctuate dramatically around cypress domes and strands, so cypresses develop knees that protrude from the water at high levels to provide oxygen for the root systems. Dwarf cypress trees grow in drier areas with poorer soil. Epiphytes, such as bromeliads, Spanish moss, orchids and ferns grow on the branches and trunks of cypress trees. Everglades National Park features 25 species of orchids. Tall cypress trees provide excellent nesting areas for birds, including wild turkeys, ibis, herons, egrets, anhingas, and belted kingfishers. Mammals in cypress regions include white-tailed deer, squirrels, raccoons, opossums, skunks, swamp rabbits, river otters, and bobcats, as well as small rodents. Mangrove trees cover the coastlines of South Florida, sometimes growing inland depending on the amount of salt water present within the Everglades ecosystems. During dry years when less fresh water flows to the coast, mangroves will appear among freshwater plants. When rain is abundant, sawgrass and other freshwater plants may be found closer to the coast. 3 species of mangrove trees, red, black, and white, can be found in the Everglades. Due to the high tolerance of saltwater winds, extreme tides, high temperatures, and muddy soils, mangrove trees are uniquely adapted to extreme conditions. They act as nurseries for many marine and bird species. They are also Florida's first defense against the destructive forces of hurricanes, absorbing flood waters and preventing coastal erosion. The mangrove system in Everglades National Park is the largest continuous system of mangroves in the world. Within the Florida mangrove systems live 220 species of fish, and a variety of crabs, crayfish, shrimp, mollusks, and other invertebrates, which serve as the main source of food for many birds. Dozens of bird species use mangroves as nurseries and food stores, including pelicans, grebes, tricolored herons, gulls, terns, hawks and kites, and arboreal birds like mangrove cuckoos, yellow warblers, and white-crowned pigeons. The mangroves also support 24 species of amphibians and reptiles, and 18 species of mammals, including the endangered green turtle, hawksbill turtle, and West Indian manatee. Coastal lowlands. Coastal lowlands, or wet prairies, are saltwater marshes that absorb marine water when it gets higher fresh water when rains are heavy. Floods occur during hurricane and tropical storm surges when ocean water can rise several feet over the land. Heavy wet seasons also cause floods when rain from the north flows into the Everglades. Few trees can survive in the conditions of this region, but plants, succulents like saltwort and glasswort, tolerate salt, brackish water, and desert conditions. Animal life in this zone is dependent upon the amount of water present but commonly found animals include Cape sable seaside sparrows, Everglades snail kites, wood storks, eastern indigo snakes, and small mammals such as rats, mice, and rabbits. Marine and estuarine. The largest body of water within the park is Florida Bay, which extends from the mangrove swamps of the mainland's southern tip to the Florida Keys. Over 800 square miles of marine ecosystem lies in this range. Coral, sponges, and seagrasses serve as shelter and food for crustaceans and mollusks, which in turn are the primary food source for larger marine animals. Sharks, stingrays, and barracudas also live in this ecosystem, as do larger species of fish that attract sport fishing. Pelicans, shorebirds, terns, and black skimmers are among the birds frequenting park shorelines. The bay also has its own resident population of bottlenose dolphins.